Well, I was ordained quite a while ago when in the sort of first wave of Southern Baptist attempts to stop women from doing ministry. And so it's really painful for this issue to come up again after those of us who supported women's ordination left quite a long time ago. But of course, what we see is that women still answer the call to ordination no matter what the Southern Baptist Convention says. And so the convention's really still fighting a battle I think it lost a long time ago.
Yeah. What are the arguments that they put forward against women in 2023 from being ordained or being in a leadership position?
Well, they read the Bible to say that, the Apostle Paul excludes women because at one point Paul says, let women keep silence in the church. But that's really not a good interpretation of that passage, and it doesn't consider all the information we know about history and to whom Paul was speaking. And so they make an argument that it's biblical, but I would counter that it's not biblical at all.
How many churches have actually been impacted by the decision?
I think at this point there are five. The two that were, it was a reaffirmation of their exclusion. They had been excluded earlier and they had appealed that exclusion. But the sort of word on the streets on social media is that there's a pastor who has started a list of churches with women pastors. And this isn't just senior pastor, this is anyone with the title of pastor. And I think there are about 170 churches already on that list.
Interesting. It's considered the biggest Protestant denomination in the US. Just how big is that?
So there are about 14, 15 million Southern Baptists, and they're deeply concentrated in the South. And so that's made them a really powerful political bloc in the South. And so we see a close connection between what goes on there and what happens politically in the South. And then that has influence among the larger evangelical movement across the U.S.
Interesting. When you think about this, it feels a little about trying to roll back the rights of women. We consider Roe v. Wade stripping women of their rights to be pastors. Is it a political position? Is it a political power play that they are after at this point?
Well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, because you'll discover, as you mentioned, there's a correlation between the people who want to do this and then the people who oppose abortion rights and oppose LGBTQ rights. And of course, one of the things that's going on now is there's a clergy sex abuse scandal happening in the Southern Baptist Convention that was supposed to be addressed at this meeting, and yet it's been delayed yet again because they focus their attention here. And so I think in some ways they're creating a smoke screen. So they've created this issue around women pastors so that we're actually not looking at their inability to deal with what's going on with the clergy sex abuse scandal among them. And so you have all of those things are intertwined. They're not separate into a religious and a political, but really are joined as parts of a whole.
Yeah. I mean, we know, as you point out, that the southern states are far more conservative, but how do women, members of the Southern Baptists, feel about the sort of subjugation of women, pulling back women's rights?
Well, it's interesting. I did interviews with Southern Baptist women across the spectrum quite a few years back for a book that I did on them. And the most conservative of them would tell me that in families they made decisions together, and that, in fact, they told me in the church they didn't really want to be pastor because if men couldn't lead, they wouldn't come at all. And so they were very pragmatic about it. And they'll use the words, "Oh yes, I'm supposed to submit," but for them, submission is never completely giving into what a man wants. One of the women told me, that man may be the head, but woman's the neck that turns him. And so I don't think the women are as submissive as some of the hype might promote them to be.
Interesting. So what do you think is going to happen? Will these 5 churches survive? Will this move to get women out of the priesthood actually succeed?
Well, when the fundamentalists took over the denomination in the 80s and early 90s, a lot of the churches that supported women in ministry left and formed two organizations. One's called the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, and the other's called the Alliance of Baptists. And so there's already a place for these churches, if they want to join in with other like-minded Baptist churches, to go. So I think the churches will be fine. I don't know so much about the Southern Baptist Convention because they're fighting among themselves over so many things that, we may see them sort of dividing up into ever smaller pieces.
Yeah, so are they being diminished, do you think, particularly by decisions like this?
Well, sure. And we see that in the U.S., that the Christian church on the whole is shrinking in size, that fewer people are participating, not because people aren't spiritual, but because they consider them non-religious. And I think a lot of it is because of the scandals we've seen. Young people talk about these decisions around women and LGBTQ people and race, which is another factor that plays into all of this, for reasons that they no longer trust the church as an institution. So I definitely see it in decline, and the numbers have shown that as they've gone down through the years.
Yeah. Susan, really great to get your perspective on this. It's you have a deep insight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.